awesome.
I am
telling Chris, there's a lot of handshakes, there's a lot of fist pumps, easily 8 minutes of hellos before we get into actual content
this is the
on
best
the show.
thing. Because this is a dream come true.
Yeah.
Because in trying to put this show together, Nick and I were doing a lot of work in L.A. People, they hadn't announced the show yet, but we were doing a lot of things because we're huge basketball fans. And with Chris, spending a lot of time with him in L.A. Him and I know each other from our former life at another network. But to have our show come to fruition, you being added to the show, and now him finally coming to New York because the NBA season. So for us, it's a little more than just a normal guest. When we say a friend of the show, we really mean that in Chris Broussard.
My first meeting when I came out to L.A. with you guys, I met Chris. Remember the cafeteria?
Eating lunch together.
Yeah, you saw when Chris made me buy my own coffee. You remember that part? I joke. All right, let's talk some basketball. Let's talk some Lakers. They lost 120-115 to the Clippers last night, thanks in gigantic part to Lonzo Ball. Went 1 for 7, 3 points, 3 lonely points. Lonzo shooting 31% from the field and 25% from three-point range this season. Well, at least the guy's being consistent. All right, Chris Broussard, how should the Lakers handle Lonzo? What is the best approach to how they can either make him fit in with the Lakers better or just make him a better basketball player?
I don't know where you guys stand on this, but I heard the tease G League. No way, no how. I'm not trying to be Rob Parker, but G League? Is that you thinking G League?
Yeah.
What I say about Lonzo Ball with the Lakers, leave him alone. Let him play. Let him do exactly what he's doing. He is averaging 9 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds. I know his shooting is horrible, but he's become the youngest player ever to have a triple-double. He's had 2 triple-doubles, the first Laker since Magic Johnson, maybe the first rookie overall in 20 games. His second game, he goes for 29 points, falls, 1 assist or shy of a triple-double.
Yeah.
And we're acting like he's been horrible. Now, if you look at the history of the NBA, there have been tremendous point guards who struggled early. Steve Nash came off the bench his first 2 years. Gary Payton averaged 8 points, 6 assists his first 2 years. Chauncey Billups was with 4 teams and a bust for 5 years before going to Detroit.
But none of those guys were anointed the way this guy was, that he was going to come in and be the next fresh face of the biggest team on in one of the biggest cities.
And that's the problem.
Stories.
Right.
Because of his dad, there is over scrutiny.
And because of the Lakers and Magic.
Lakers.
I mean, it's like
Magic played
it was like a domino. Magic Johnson just took over. They made it, but man, we want this kid. He's an L.A. kid.
We figured if they want to,
I mean, they needed showtime. But one thing that I want to point out that I think has become a detriment, that was a skill set that you and I, because we went to watch him play live at UCLA, Poly Pavilion. We saw it. He was such an unselfish player. He'd get the rebound, or someone else get the rebound, give it to him. Man, he was apt to throw the ball 45 feet up. But that doesn't transfer to the pro game, and you don't see him doing that. So something that used to be a huge plus for him, I see him every game make the same mistakes over and over. You're the point guard. Run the offense. Push the tempo. You can't throw the ball up the way you used to. So for me, my biggest problem is, no, I don't want him to go to the G League. I just want him to play smarter. I want the coaches, and I worry about that with that young staff. Yeah, play him, but play him the right way. And you have to play him at the end of games. The reason why, because the overall value, if you have success with him, it doubles because they're in critical times. And visually, it's not good for a superstar player to be sitting there watching the fourth quarter for the most part in these critical games.
All right, and as you were saying that, they were showing highlights of him playing at the end of the game and taking 2 terrible three-pointers. Now, I agree with you, if he's going to stay up on this level, he needs to play at the end of games, but that's what they're going to get from him. You mentioned 9, 7, and 7. This is points, rebounds, assists. I'm going to give you a different set of numbers. 31%, 24%, 43%. That's field goal percentage, three-point percentage, free throw percentage. That makes him the league's worst high-volume three-point shooter, the league's worst high-volume free throw shooter as a guard. And I'm going to focus and hone in on the free throw percentage. And here's why. That, to me, is a sign of a guy whose confidence is
That's a game
lost. He was in the mid to high 60s in college.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a guy that was going to come into the league and shoot 85% from the line. I get it. The hitch in his shot's going to hurt him in that. But when you are shooting free throws worse than Shaq, Dwight Howard, worse than any player in recent NBA history, when that's not what you were in college, that's confidence. And that's why I said the G League. I said the G League because let him go back and play a few games where he's reminded what it's like to be one of the best players, have good games, have efficient games, and see if that just shakes or steadies his brain.
He's had big games in the NBA. His second game was a big game.
Right,
He's had triple doubles. Him going down to the G League, I think, could wreck his confidence. Because, I mean, you're the second pick in the league going down to the G League. I can't think of a player that's happened to. Exactly.
I think the G League, I think guys go after him like Patrick Beverly the first game. Because, man, that's a scrappy league. Like, they got nothing guaranteed to them.
Yep.
Everyone is trying to come up. My thing is, learn the game and learn how to play smarter. Nick brings up a good point with the free throw shooting. We wouldn't accept this type of shooting for a guy who was 7'6". I mean, we would make we wouldn't accept this type, because even if a guy was 7 foot, you know what his free throw, his field goal percentage would be around 65, 68%. So it leads to playing scared. When you're 6'6" and you can't shoot, and you're shooting 40% from the free throw line, how often do you think I'm going to the hole? I'm afraid to get fouled.
And I would imagine you're there a lot, and you hear a lot of these post-game press conferences, and you hear the questions, which are similar to the conversations we're having. And I'm sure a lot of it revolves around his confidence, his mental state, like what's inside, because we know he's got this skill set. What's the answer? I mean, what's the line they keep dishing out? What's keeping them from getting through to him somehow?
He's got a lot to work on. There's no question about it. But like I said, a lot of great point guards had that initially. He's got to learn the pick and roll game better. I think in the summer, they need to revamp his whole shot. Like, don't do it now.
Yes.
You got to let him play now.
Yes.
But in the summer, they need to change his shot.
And the free throw shooting is an indicator of that.
Yep, exactly.
I'm going to point out one small thing that is, to me, indicative of a guy who is not only has lost his confidence, but is questioning everything about his game. And that is the propensity with which he's taking threes. The last 10 games, half of his shots have been three-pointers, despite the fact that he is the league's worst three-point shooter. Chris, I know you still play, and I know you still play, and I even still try a little bit to play pickup basketball. What does the worst player on the court do? He stands back and chucks. Because he knows he can't get to the rim. He knows if he puts the ball on the ground, it's going to get ripped. He knows that he's not a better athlete than the guy. So the guy that really shouldn't be out there, which oftentimes, if I'm playing in your type of league, is me, I'm just going to stand out there and try to hope my shot's good. Because I know if I go to the rim, it's getting swatted, or I'm getting bodied. And Lonzo took
and he's got no mid-range game either. That's the big. He can't finish because he's not that strong yet.
One non-3-point shot last night.
He can't shoot mid-range unless he's going to what, the right or to the left.
All right. Well, in my league, I always go to the rim, but you guys didn't want to know about that, so we're not going to talk about that. Chris Broussard, we're going to talk LeBron with you a little bit later in the show, but coming up, one of the best players on the NFL's top team joins the show, Eagle safety Malcolm Jenkins.